Before we get to Dharma. Before we go to the Dharma talk, please join me in Okay, better. All right, so we have officially finished the 10 fetters. So for the next 2 sessions, we're going to do a quick summary, hopefully. I'm going to split into the first 5 fetters, and then next class, or next service, we'll do the second 5. So hopefully for the past few months, as we were going through all these fetters, something clicked for some people. And we got an understanding of what the fetters are, what they mean, how they are useful or unuseful to our practice. So the 10 fetters are essentially the obstacles that are in our way that are hindering us from attaining enlightenment. So these are the characteristics, these are the concepts that hold us back, that keep us from attaining that full enlightenment. So we have the first 5 today, which are the smaller fetters, or categorically the smaller fetters, and the second 5 are the larger fetters. And as we go through the fetters, because these are the obstacles that are holding us back from enlightenment, eradicating these fetters is what will cause us to attain enlightenment. And so I've also put in the categories of levels of enlightenment. And so there are 4 initial levels of enlightenment in this case. So there's the Satipatthana, Sakadana, to eradicate and go down the list of eradication, we start to attain those different levels of enlightenment. And so the first level of enlightenment is attained after the eradication of the first 3 fetters of self-view, doubt, and attachment to rites and rituals. The 4th and 5th fetter is weakened at the 2nd stage of enlightenment and fully eradicated at the 3rd stage of enlightenment. And it's only at the 4th level of enlightenment that we eradicate the remaining 5, the higher fetters. So hopefully I'll get through the first 5 today. Okay. So the first one is self-view, or Sakaya Ditti. Ditti here literally means view. And this is the false idea or perception that we have on ourselves, that we are this unchanging, permanent person that is the same being from the day we were born until the day we die. There's nothing about us changes. Obviously, that's not true, right? We grow old, we get sick, we die, we go through different emotions and feelings, things change. We like things one day, we hate them the next, right? So things are constantly changing in our lives. So there's no permanent self or me or I that we can call a person, right? So in this case, it's referring to specifically the view of the 5 aggregates, or the 5 skandhas, right? Which are form, feeling, perception, mental formation, and consciousness. These 5 aggregates is what makes us a person, right? Take any of those 5 aggregates, any one of those 5 out, we're no longer a person. And so it's the attachment to those aggregates that cause us to have this false view of self. And so there's different aspects to this. There's a higher form of understanding and a lesser form. The higher form is just the idea of self, of attempting to get rid of this belief that there's a permanent happiness in things, that there's a permanent, unchanging self, right? So in Buddhism, we don't have the concept of soul, right? We don't have a soul, because soul means that you are just one being that is constant and consistent throughout time and space. It is unchanging, right? Because in most world religions, we have a soul, and when we die, your soul either goes to heaven or hell as that same person. Buddhism, we don't believe that. We don't believe in a soul. Instead of it's the consciousness that transfers from one life to another, from one realm of existence to another. And that's because if there was a self and a soul, and the soul is unchanging and permanent, that means that if you were to be reborn, you would have been reborn as the exact same person. You would have been a doppelganger of your last life. Clearly, that's not true. Otherwise, there would be millions of you out there, right? Or at least in the past. So that cannot be necessarily true. And so, because we don't have this idea of soul, there is the concept of non-self, or anatman, which is the second part of this. This is the higher understanding of self-view. This anatman, this non-self, is similarly the... Can you... But this fetter specifically is on the self-identity view, right? And there's a little hint of non-self in there, but the non-self doesn't actually get eradicated or used until the last fetter of ignorance, right? Because non-self is this very important, very heavy topic in Buddhism, right? And so it's not as easy to eradicate as most other hindrances we have. But self-view is a little bit more easier to eradicate because it's simply just the view of how we view ourselves and how we view the world, right? So our practice aims to overcome this illusion of self and to realize that all things are truly impermanent and unsatisfactory and have no self. And the reason why this is important to release is because this self-view that we have, or this identity of things that we hold on to, thinking that they bring us lasting happiness and joy and whatnot, is all an illusion to impermanence, right? And so because we don't always see that clearly, we then grow attachments to things that we desire or want or have or seek pleasure out of, right? Which kind of bleeds into the second and third fetter as well. But the first 3 fetters are related to view, ditti specifically, right? And this is the view in the sense of how we view the world. So it's more than just the beliefs and opinions that we have of the understanding of the world, but it's more the it's more of those false beliefs, the perceptions of seeing truth and untruth and truth, right? Which is also a verse in the Dhammapada, right? Seeing truth and untruth and untruth and truth. And it's only by seeing truth in truth and untruth is when we have the ability to release that attachment to our views. This is also the self-view is also about the things that we believe make us happy, make us who we are, right? So the example I used last time was sometimes when you go shopping with friends or with yourself, right? You're picking out specific types of clothing that suit you because they look good on you. This, right? And you go with friends and you're like, oh yeah, that's so you. What is so you? Who's you to be so you? Right? Why does this piece of clothing make it so you? Right? But it's also other things, like whether it's, you flashing around, a fancy car or a fancy house or a fancy job title, whatever it is, right? These are the things that you believe make you who you are. And it could be anything: clothing, friends, status, money, wealth, knowledge even, right? Anything you use to identify yourself with that is external, outside of your mind, is a false belief. It's an illusion of the self that we hold on to. And so if we understand there's no consistent, unchanging self, right? So to practice non-self, we observe the interconnectedness of all things. And that nothing is permanent, and nothing is a permanent fixed phenomenon. We can realize that by contemplating on the source of all things, if something was permanent, unchanging, of how it is, then there would be no thing before that object, right? So since everything comes from something, there can't be something that comes from nothing, right? And so we have to also recognize within this first fetter that everything is a creation of something else. Nothing comes into being as it is, right? You didn't just wake up one morning and your entire life experiences and personality and likes and dislikes and hates and whatnot just manifested all on its own, right? And this bleeds into other things like hatred or ignorance or even pleasure or even liking or disliking, right? You like or dislike or you hate or you love things and people. Not, those feelings didn't just come out of nowhere, right? There were reasons of why they were created. There were reasons why they were caused. And so one thing that we can kind of see is if you're meeting someone for the first time, right? A lot of time we hear this saying of the first impression is the best impression. Make a good first impression. Why? Because typically when we experience something new for the first time, that's our strongest memory of it. And so when you meet someone new for the first time, and they make a bad impression, or they do something or say something that you don't agree with or you don't like, that feeling or that emotion that you're having will stick with you for the entirety of your relationship or acquaintanceship with that person. Even if they do or say something over time that is opposite of that first impression, you're still going to maintain that first bad impression of them, regardless of their demeanor, regardless of what they do to assuage that wrong impression. And so one thing to do that I do that helped overcome this false view of people is to reset your impression of them every time you see them. So for all of you who are here, whether this is the first time or the 100th time, this is my first time meeting you. Because as soon as you walk out the door, my memory of you resets. I'll always remember your faces. I will never remember your name, but I'll remember your faces. But that's beside the point. The point is regardless of what impression you make toward yourself or someone else, as soon as they leave, you reset. So the next time you see them is as if you're meeting them for the first time. So regardless of what impression they made to you the first time, no longer exists. You no longer hold on to that view of that person in whatever light you made of it. Oof. The second fetter, skeptical doubt. Skeptical doubt here, or doubt, is also one of the 5 hindrances in meditation, right? And so skeptical doubt here needs to be differentiated specifically from inquiring doubt, because the Buddha acknowledged and even emphasized to inquire about your practice, inquire about his teachings. Don't just believe things out of blind faith, right? Because blind faith is essentially believing in something whether you know it to be true or not. You're just believing it to believe it. And the Buddha told his disciples to not do that, right? Because in the time of the Buddha, when Hinduism and Brahmanism was the main faiths at the time, it was all mostly on faith. You make the sacrifices and prayers, and you do the mantras for the gods and whomever, and you just kind of leave it up to that, right? It's out of your hands. And the Buddha told us to not do that, to not put your faith in anyone else except yourself. And so the antidote to this, to skeptical doubt, is saddha. Saddha means faith. Or more specifically, a better translation that I came upon was confidence based on knowledge. Because if you have knowledge about something, then you have confidence in it, right? A lot of time our doubt comes in our practice, right? And specifically, the Buddha mentioned skeptical doubt here for the the triple jewels, right? The Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. Having doubt in the practice, having doubt in the teachings. But the Buddha told you to inquire about those doubts. Ask yourself why you have those doubts. Where are those doubts coming from? Where are they leading you? Because Buddhism is not a happiness pill. It's nothing that is going to work for you overnight, right? Buddhism is a very practical path. You have to put in the effort in order to get results, right? You can't just come to temple and pray and bow and do offerings and light incense, and all of a sudden things magically happen for you. It doesn't. Doing those things does create good karma, does gain merit, right? It's a very superficial version of it. The real merit, the real karma you get is through actual practice. So we chant and we pray about compassion and loving kindness and deep listening, but are you actually doing that? Are you actually going out and being compassionate toward people? Are you actually being generous? Are you actually deeply listening? Most of the time, no, you're not. Because when you're in a conversation, and this is a test you can conduct yourself, is when you're having a conversation with someone, especially if it's a deep conversation, right? Watch yourself, watch your thinking, watch your mind, how it's reacting to the conversation. Are you actually listening to what the person is saying, or are you already rehearsing what to say next, or what to reply, or how you're going to reply? Right? Because if you're deeply listening, then you have no thoughts. You're actually just listening. There's no thinking, there's no worrying, there's no trying to come up with a best answer or response, nothing like that. You're deeply listening to that person without any interference of the mind. But if you catch yourself that you are thinking, that you are rehearsing a response, you are rehearsing a comeback, or whatever it may be, then you're not actually listening. You're not giving them your true compassionate time. But in our practice, doubt comes because we don't allow ourselves enough time. Because our practice doesn't work overnight, it takes many, many weeks or months for anything to potentially manifest, right? A month or two from meditating, for example, you may feel that nothing's actually happening. Nothing's working. My mind is still racing. I'm still being distracted. I'm still slouching over. I'm still falling asleep, right? So you're doubting if the practice is actually working. This doubt is more complicated than It may be, but in most cases, this doubt is simply a reflexive sign of our impatience. Because a lot of time, at least in my experience, when people come and ask about meditation, they're thinking, if I sit and meditate for a few times, then my mind's going to be at ease. I'm going to have less anxiety, I'm going to have less stress, I'm going to have less depression, or whatever it may be. I'll be sitting there staring at them and says, who told you that? Maybe after a few months of meditation, yes, that is the outcome. But you're not going to succeed anywhere in the first few sessions of meditation. It takes more than that. And because it takes time, people often become discouraged, right? And they walk away from meditation. They stop meditating altogether because they're just like, it doesn't work. I'm like, it does work. You're just not patient enough with yourself. You're wanting quick outcomes, solutions, right? This isn't Amazon Prime shipping, one-day shipping, okay? I wish it was, but it's not. This is your old school ordering out of a catalog type of order, right? You order the catalog, it comes to you a week later. You browse through it maybe for another week, you fill out that form, right? And you have to mail it out, and you have to mail a check out, and you have to wait for it. Am I just really old? I feel like I'm very old saying that. I remember doing that with like Macy's and JCPenney's. The point is, that's a true process of what patience should be, right? So forget about this one-day shipping and think of a Macy's catalog. That's the correct time frame. And the Buddha stated, and he told I can't remember the monk's name, but the Buddha told one of his not new monks, but a monk that's been ordained for a while, right? And the monk was becoming discouraged in his practice because he was telling the Buddha, Lord Buddha, I've been meditating for hours on end a day. I don't sleep, I don't eat. I'm just consistently focused on my practice, on my meditation, trying to attain enlightenment. And so the Buddha told him that one will reach enlightenment if one carefully and patiently follows the instructions. The only uncertainty is when. Experience also overcomes doubt about one's ability and also doubt whether this is the right path. Once you realize for yourself the beautiful stages of the path, you discover that you are indeed capable of attaining the fruits of the path. And I can attest to this because I became a monk, right? You don't just become a monk out of nowhere, right? It's a deep sacrifice in a way. And so, but it only happened because there was a strong realization that something is working, something is correct, something was attained, right? And so it's that kind of calling that drove me to monkhood. Because I gave myself time. I think it was like 15 years of practice before I was like, okay, this isn't enough for me. But after a while, after consistent practice, you'll notice changes. And I always tell people that these changes are very subtle to yourself, right? But when I am speaking to other of my students, or I'm going through teachings or one-on-one sessions and whatnot, after a while, every once in a while, I kind of test them, right? I give them a little quiz, a pop quiz, just to see, not if they know all the answers. I don't care if they don't know a single answer. That's not what I'm looking for. What I'm looking for is how they respond to the question, how they answer the question, right? Because here it's about the quality, not the quantity, right? So Matt, if I ask you an open-ended question, for instance, right? A lot of times, some students want to flaunt their knowledge and write this whole paragraph for an answer, when really the correct answer is 3 words long, Likewise, when we practice, we sometimes envision or even hope that this fireworks show of enlightenment happens when we're meditating. That's not how that works either. Meditation or enlightenment isn't a massive fireworks show. It isn't this elaborate showcase of lights and beams and whatnot. Right? It's not. But we have a kind of romanticized idea of that's what enlightenment is like. When really it's just a, cool, kind of a moment. It's not as dramatic as we may sometimes make it out to be. The doubt and faith in our meditation practice often arises and passes away depending on what we're using as criteria for success, right? And this is important when we meditate, is if you go into meditation with this idea that it needs to be a certain way or feel a certain way or end up being a certain way, then you're just allowing yourself to fail. Because now you have expectations. And I've said this many times, expectations is the devil of Buddhism. Because if you have expectations, then what happens when those expectations are not met? We're sad, we're depressed, we're angry, right? But if we don't allow to have expectations like we're supposed to, allow things to be as they need to be, when they become, or when they be, is that the thing? To allow things to be, then we can be at a much more peaceful, spacious mindset. If you allow expectations of people, let's say your significant other, right? For the most part, we often have expectations of them. We expect them to treat us nicely, to be respectful, to listen when we need someone to listen, to be there when we need someone to be there, to do the dishes, take up the trash, whatever it may be. We have these expectations of what a good partner is like. But then something happens, and one of those expectations are broken or not met. Now we doubt if this is truly the person we want to be with. Or we doubt they don't love us enough, or they doubt they don't care enough. So maybe that's true, maybe it's not true. We don't know. We can't go inside their mind and read their mind and know exactly how they feel and believe. But we allow those expectations to fester and make it seem like they are doing this on purpose maybe, right? Or they don't really love us or care about us. And so to let go of those expectations means to have a nice, it gives us space to let things be as it happens. So whatever happens, happens. It is what it is. It's my motto in life. I get that tattooed on my forehead on my deathbed. Not really, don't do that. The third fetter is attachment to rites and rituals, silabata paramasa. And so here we have to kind of dig deep a little bit into the etymology of some of these words. So silabata, sila means moral conduct, right? Which in our case, we can use precepts as an example. Bata means rites or ceremonies or rituals, right? And so this refers specifically that rites and rituals, the things that we do, like chanting or praying or bowing or lighting incense or making offerings, it's the belief that these rites and rituals in and of themselves bring us to enlightenment or liberation. They do not. This is part of a fetter which may not really apply to now in this day and age. But back in the Buddhist time, again, during Hinduism and Brahmanism, it was a very, very ritualistic practice or religion. Everything was a ritual. You want a new house? Ritual. You want a new job? Ritual. You want a healthy life? Ritual. You want a healthy baby? Ritual. Baby was born? Ritual. Getting married? Ritual. Everything was a ritual. Because they believed by doing these rituals, we'll gain fortunate outcomes. But the Buddha told us, again, that rituals are just external objects, are tools to help us realize the path, or realize reality as it is. Same when we do rituals, because don't get me wrong, there's a lot of rituals here too, right? Bowing is a ritual, chanting is a ritual. But these are means to an end, not an end in and of themselves. They are tools because they help us focus our energy and our practice onto something specific. So when we're doing chanting, chanting is a form of meditation. We're not just chanting words out of nothing, right? We're chanting because it allows us to focus and to concentrate on what we are reading so that we can absorb it fully, understand it fully, and use what we just chanted into practice. So we can take what we read and actually put it into use in the world. And some of the other rituals, of course, like bowing, it's just a humble gesture not to worship the Buddha. The Buddha is unworshipable. He doesn't want to be worshipped. He doesn't care to be worshipped, right? If we were to remove every statue in this building, this would still be a Buddhist temple, right? The statues, iconography, doesn't make it a temple. There are many temples out there that have 0 statues because they know that the statue doesn't make a temple. The statue doesn't make the practice. They're here because as we're praying or as we're bowing or meditating, it gives us a visual to focus on. And so when we see the Buddha, it should cultivate within you the characteristics of a Buddha, which is what? Enlightenment, compassion, generosity, loving kindness, equanimity, acceptance, wisdom, right? All these characteristics that we want to develop within ourselves. And so when we see an image of the Buddha, we want to absorb and develop those same characteristics of the Buddha within ourselves, which is why they're here. The 4th fetter, sensual desire. And this is sensual desire through the objects received through the 6 sense organs. So it's a sight through the eye, smell through the nose, taste through the tongue, tangible objects through the body, and mind objects through the mind. But it's neither the sense objects or the sense organs that has the quality of becoming the fetter. Instead, it's the desire or lust for those sense experiences which becomes the fetter. And in the Four Noble Truths, the Buddha described craving as the cause of the universal suffering, right? Which is the second noble truth. The first noble truth, that in life there is suffering. There's dissatisfaction in life. The second truth, that is the cause of our suffering, which is desire, but more specifically the attachment we have to our desires. So the Buddha describes that there are 3 types of desires or craving. Craving for sense pleasure, craving for becoming or existence, and craving for non-becoming or non-existence. Our natural inclination in life, we seek out the things that bring us pleasure, that bring us joy, that bring us happiness. On the other end of that, we have then ill will, where we push away anything that's unpleasurable. So we're constantly going after things that bring us happiness, that bring us pleasure. And we push away the things that we believe don't bring us happiness and don't bring us pleasure. So we're always in this mistaken view that if we are always giving ourselves things that bring us pleasure, that we will always be happy. But the sheer fact of you continuously going after something that brings you happiness and pleasure, that in itself should already indicate to you that whatever you're seeking isn't enough, because you're constantly wanting more and more and more. Leanna and I were just talking about ice cream earlier. We're both very big fans of ice cream. I was telling him I can eat a whole pint in one sitting without even knowing it. He's like, yeah, I can eat a whole half gallon without knowing it. I'm like, see, we're thinking the more we eat, the more happier we'll be. But the next day or later that day, we're having stomach aches and we're just dying, right? And so the belief that the more we get, the happier we'll be is false. It's an illusion. The more you go after things, and when you're recognizing it, you're continuously going after that same thing over and over again. it's not an object of happiness after all. It may bring you initially happiness and pleasure, but the moment you have to go after something else or the same thing to bring you happiness and pleasure, it's already a cause of suffering. So this desire is tied up with just simply wanting to be pleased, right? So the Buddha also tells us that along with the fifth fetter, ill will, these two fetters together, sensual desire and ill will, constitute a second level of the idea of self. A stream enterer, the first level of enlightenment, has overcome a sense of self at the level of views, but there still remains a sensual self, a sensuality. So we could even call this selfishness. One may not believe in a me anymore, but you still want good things. You still want good stuff, right? And so you may not believe in a self-identity me anymore, right? You may believe that you've gone out of that, that you've eradicated that fetter. But the moment where you want something, whether it's to help you out or to make you feel better, etc., you've already fallen back into the fetter. Because at least the self-view is more about the mental state of wanting things, right? You want, let's just say, for example, you want to be right. You're in an argument with someone, right? And you win the argument, right? That's pleasurable for some people, right? It's a mental pleasure. And so that may be eradicated at the first level, but you still want, at the same time, ice cream, because it tastes good, right? So you may have eradicated this view of the mental view, the psychological view, but you still want sensual stuff, too. So beware of the ice cream goblin. Oof, why is time going by so quickly? A lot of times, and this is not a lot of times, this is every day, right? Where we see products or services or advertisements saying, you know, buy this product or do this service or go here and do that to have everlasting happiness, right? We see all these advertisements for different cruises or holiday destinations or whatnot, right? Do this and you'll feel satisfied. But through our practice of meditation, and we try to break down that illusion, we see that even this grand holiday to Europe, or Asia, or wherever you want to go, may be fun and exciting, but as soon as the trip is over, then what? Do you still hold on to that same excitement and joy? Probably not. This is not to say that we shouldn't have any desires, right? This is not the point of this. It's okay to have desires, because you have to have a desire in life to do good for yourself, to your family, right? You want to be successful, you want to succeed in life, you want to be able to support yourself, support your friends and family. These are okay. What causes this to be a fetter, what causes desire to be a fetter, is the attachment, the strong belief that we have to have things in order to be happy, in order to be satisfied, in order to feel like we're successful, right? The majority of people believe success is according to how much money they have, how big their house is, how many cars they have, how many vacations they go on, right? This is their criteria for success. This is a false criterion. This is false success. Why? Because all that is impermanent. So impermanent here is the big picture. It is the header of the 10 fetters. That everything on this list is impermanent. Every fetter is impermanent. Every cause of the fetters are impermanent. Every satisfaction, dissatisfaction, pleasure, unpleasure, non-pleasure, unpleasure. You get what I'm saying. That too. All this is impermanent, is unsatisfactory. And so through our practice of meditation, when we start to peel away those layers of what we believe brings us happiness, brings us joy, or even the things that bring us pain and suffering, if we start to peel away those things through meditation, then we can start to pull off this veil of suffering and see the true reality of things. True reality of things is happiness is nowhere out there. It is in here. It's within ourselves. Until we recognize that, until we realize that, because we can all agree to that superficially, right? We can all say, yeah, happiness is out there. Happiness is about material things and people and places, right? Superficially, we all can agree to that. But intrinsically, we don't really grasp that fully. We don't really hold on to that as a true doctrine of self. So, cutting through these fetters is that realization, is a true realization, not an agreement. An agreement is not a realization. I can't tell you what type of realization you'll have because it will be different for everybody. But once it is attained, once you have that aha moment, it is so obvious, it will literally slap you in the face, kind of a feeling. You'll just know. But it can only happen through consistent practice and meditation. Fifth fetter, ill will, and this could either be mental, verbal, or physical conflict, either with ourselves or with others. And it's experienced in many ways: anger, hatred, irritation, annoyance, jealousy, anything that is negative, essentially, right? And just as we're untrained, just as the untrained mind becomes entranced by pleasant feelings, we become dissatisfied with, or even angry with, or fearful of the unpleasant ones. And so with the fourth fetter, we're trying to bring in all the things that we enjoy and have pleasure for or with. Ill will is pushing everything else that we don't like away, right? And so even thoughts of past experiences or situations are also fertile grounds for ill will. Because what happens in meditation is, if you're truly in meditation, what can happen is sometimes there's a rush of past emotions arise, or even past trauma that arises, that causes an unsettledness in our mind, right? And so when these things arise and we're unmindful of them and we don't know how to address them, then they can take over. And we start thinking of past mistakes, past obstacles, past situations, right? Our mind's all like, hey, let's think about that argument we had with our significant other 2 weeks ago, right? Let's replay that in our mind and see what we could have done differently. Stupid. Why? What benefit, what good will that bring? Thing that has already happened. Who cares? It also works in the opposite direction, thinking of the future, right? And so you may be sitting in meditation, and instead of, oh yeah, you've pushed away the thought of last week's argument, right? And then you sit back, you're meditating, and all of a sudden now you're thinking of, oh, what do I need to do after temple? Do I want to go to lunch? Do I want to make lunch? Do I want to buy lunch? Do I want to go to the grocery store? Do I just want to starve to death? What do I want to do, right? And so our mind is obsessed with time. Right, it's obsessed with the past and obsessed with the future, because those are two components that the mind can control. It cannot control the present moment, which is why we constantly get distracted when we're trying to meditate. Right? Because when you're meditating on the present and being mindful of your object of meditation, or your breathing, right, you're fully focused in the here and now. But our mind is like, no, I don't like that. Let's think about the argument. Or let's think about where we want to go on vacation next summer. Right? Because those are two components that the mind can control. So we can't say that we're the masters of our mind, because we're not. Otherwise, you'd be able to stop that thinking at will. You'd be able to stop your distractions at will. And we can't. So until we can, we cannot control what happens to our mind. We can't control how many thoughts or distractions arise. But we can control what we do with them when they do arise. So when they do arise, one thing that I always mention or always give out during meditation classes to label. Labeling gives us the power back, gives us back the control of what we do, what happens within our mind. So if we're sitting in meditation, the door opens mid-meditation. Most people think, who's here? Why are they late? Why are they disrupting our meditation? It's all quiet, and now all of a sudden the door opens, and it slams, and it's heavy, and you hear the chimes of the security system, or you hear people whispering outside, or kids running around. You make up all these stories, you make up all these movies in our mind, right? Your mind, you start to allow those thoughts to be entertained. And so it's taking away from the meditation object, or from your meditation practice. But if we can sit and recognize that the door has opened and simply just label that, whether it's door or sound. Any one word label will do, because that's all you need. That is the reality of what is happening, is that there is a door or a sound, right? You make up the story of who they are, why are they here, where are they coming from, why are they late. Any other question, or any other application other than sound or door is a made-up story. You're making things up. And we do that all the time. When we drive down the road, someone cuts us off, we automatically go into hostile mode and either cut them off too, we flip them off, we yell them out, we try to rush in front of them and cut them off. For what? Because our mind is saying, who do they think they are cutting me off? Don't they know I'm important, my time is important, I am precious, my time is precious, my car is precious? Right? So we're trying to make ourselves feel better or justify our actions by cutting them off or doing whatever else it is. But we're making up all these excuses because we don't know why they cut us off. There could be someone in the car that's dying, that's bleeding out, or that's about to give birth. We don't know. Because we don't know, we make up a story for them. We do that all the time. When we see an accident, right? For some reason, accidents are just... We're glued to accidents. We're glued to chaos, right? And so when we see an accident, we're wondering what happened. Who was involved? How many people are involved? Did someone die? Did someone get hurt? Right? We ask all these stupid questions that has zero benefit for us. And so watch yourself, watch your mind, how you react to things when you see things or feel things or go through things. Ask yourself the questions, why? Why am I thinking this? Or why do I think like this? Where is this thought coming from? Right? It's always important to ask yourself why. But it's also important that when you fail, right? And I say fail, I mean when you allow distractions to arise, or when you allow storytelling to be said during meditation, or when you accidentally say or do something that's unwholesome or unbeneficial, failure is a big bad word, but not in a super negative way. Just in a way for you to realize that you've become unmindful at that moment. But anyway, when those happen, it's important to not judge yourself, not to criticize the distraction or the failure here, right? You simply just want to acknowledge that a failure or distraction has happened, and you go back to your object of meditation. Likewise, when you're labeling, you simply label, acknowledge what has happened, because the door opening is the reality of the situation. then you go back to your object of meditation. Something else happens, AC turns on or turns off, and you recognize that sound. You recognize it as AC or sound, and you go back to object of meditation. And so it's a back and forth, it's a lot of give and take. But after a while, what you can do with these labels, and it can be important, especially if you are semi-new to meditation, like within a year or two of meditating. Labeling is important because at the end of the meditation session, you have these buckets of different labels, right? Because each label goes in its own bucket. So at the end of the meditation, you can count how many labels you have in each bucket and what those labels are. So for instance, if it's anger, right, or annoyance, or jealousy, or whatever it may be, whatever bucket is the fullest, you observe that bucket, and you can see why exactly is this bucket the fullest? Why do I have so many labels in this one bucket? That way, for the next meditation session, you can meditate on that bucket and ask yourself, why? Where does this feeling of jealousy come from? Why do I feel jealous? Of whom or what am I jealous of? So that you can dig down deeper and deeper into the situation, into the cause of those labels. And once you get to the core reason of that label, now you have something to do. Now you have something tangible that you can work with. So if it's a person or a thing, then you can kind of pluck it out of your life in some way, shape, or form. If it's a person, then you can unfriend them, you can distance yourself from them. Whatever reasoning you believe is the correct one, now you have one less thing distracting in your meditation. It may be 1 out of 1,000,000, but still one, right? So instead of 1,000 distractions, now you have 9,999. But after a while, the list gets shorter and shorter. And that's one of the reasons why people think that meditations are working, because the list gets short at a very slow pace. But trust me, you want it to happen at a slow pace. If you rush through things, and a lot of people rush through meditation, different meditation methods and techniques, but trying to advance too fast, and they just fail. It's extremely unbeneficial to try to rush through things, especially in Buddhism, because everything is a very gradual process. Everything happens gradually. See, these are lists, and these are things that have to be eradicated at a specific point of time and place in order for the eradication to happen, for you to attain the levels of enlightenment. Level 2 and 3. Level 2 is the weakening of the fetters. It's not the complete eradication until the level 3. And so this tells you that everything happens in a gradual process. So don't think that coming to temple once a week is going to make you a better person overnight. It may help you see the errors in your ways, but it may not necessarily change you, right? You have to put in that effort. You have to put in that change yourself. Okay, I'm going to stop talking. I'm glad I didn't go through the whole list. I was like, can I do it? And then I was going through my notes this morning, like, yeah, no, I can't do it. It took me, 4 months just to go through these 10 individually? Can't put 4 or 5 months of teachings into one 40-minute session. But anyway, so that's the first 5, the easier ones to eradicate. Questions? What are your questions, concerns, emotional outbursts? Yes.
Recently came across this phrase called love without attachment. So what is the difference between love with attachment versus love without attachment?
Yes. You kind of already answered your own question. Keyword attachment. If you love something, if you truly love someone, like a partner, for instance, true love is loving them without a desire for them to change. You love them as they are. but you have expectations of them to be a certain way, to act a certain way, then you don't love them unconditionally. You love them if blah, blah, blah. You don't love them because of blah, blah, blah. So loving without attachment simply means loving them as they are for what they are, as they are. Right? And so oftentimes when we're in relationships, we love with attachment. And because when the relationship ends or something happens, we're miserable because we have attachment. We have an attachment to their presence, whether it's their presence always being there, now they're not there, or they made us feel a certain way, or did things for us, or whatever it may be, right? We have these situations that are no longer there. And so if something, whether it's an object or a person, if they were to be gone or destroyed or lost, you can assess your level of attachment according to how you feel afterward. How miserable or how happy or satisfied or unsatisfied you are. And so I love all y'all without attachment. I hope nothing ever happens to anybody. But if something were to happen, I acknowledge that whatever has happened, happened because it was supposed to happen. It is what it is. Karma does its thing. Karma has no source or entity, right? Yeah. We all have attachment. Which is why we're here, right? To get rid of attachments. Question. Any other questions? No? Yeah? No? Okay. Well, if there's no questions, then we will transfer the merit and we'll go to chanting. Namo Shakyamuni Buddha, Namo Shakyamuni Buddha, Namo Shakyamuni Buddha. For any positive karmic action we've accumulated here today, we wish to transfer the merit to all sentient beings and wish them full enlightenment. We'll be chanting the Ullambana Sutra for the month of Ullambana. Today would be the second week, so please go to page 215. I'm sorry, 216 for the chanting.
On this day, we gather to perform Ullambana ceremony to our departed relatives and friends and all wandering spirits. This holy ceremony is for all those who have passed away, died from illness, violence, and starvation around the world, and all the spirit that still wander. Especially we pray for Ukraine. We pray to the Buddha and Bodhisattva in the three time, in the 10 direction, to all the enlightened Sangha, the Devas, the guardian and protectors of the Dharma. We ask you to descend to this holy altar where we perform Ulabana ceremony to all the departed one and wandering spirit, and for Ukraine country. We pray to the Buddha, Vipassin Buddha, Sikhin Buddha, Vibhasbu Buddha, Krakukachanda Buddha, Kanaku Kamuni, Buddha, Kasyapa Buddha, and Sakyani Buddha. We ask you to descend to this holy altar where we perform the Ulabana ceremony. We raise the flower to ask that all of the Assam Buddha and Bodhisattva, the enlightened Sangha, the Devas, the guardian, the protector of the Dharma, bless its offering. With love and respect, we call to all of you for whom we pray, and for all wandering spirit to come to this altar as we perform Ulabana ceremony. Your family and friends wait to receive you. We pray that you hear our blessing. May your karma be purified. May your consciousness be purified. May you find rebirth in the land of ultimate bliss, where you may develop your compassion and wisdom and attain complete enlightenment. Namo Sakyamuni Bodhisattva in the 10 direction. Namo Buddha and Bodhisattva in the 10 direction. Namo Buddha and Bodhisattva in the 10 direction. Inviting the bell. Bodhi
Speech and mind in perfect oneness, I send my heart along with the sound of the. May the hearers awaken from forgetfulness and brings me back to my true home.
incense offering. In
Gratitude we offer this incense to all Buddhas and Bodhisattvas throughout space and time. May it be fragrant as earth herself, reflecting our careful effort, our wholehearted mindfulness, and the fruit of understanding slowly ripening. Companions of Buddhas, Bodhisattvas, may we awaken from forgetfulness and realize our true home.
opening verse. The
Incense in the censer now is burning, all the Dharma realm in every auspicious clouds appearing, our sincere intention thus fulfilling, as all Buddhas now show their perfect body. Homage to the incense cloud canopy, Bodhisattva and great Bodhisattvas.
First is Homage
to the eternally abiding Buddhas, the supreme Dharma, and sagely Sangha throughout the Dharma realm and the realm of empties, and 3 periods of time.
Homage
To the fundamental teacher Shakyamuni Buddha, Maitreya, honored future Buddha, Manjushri, great wisdom, universal great conduct, Bodhisattva, all Dharma guarding Deva Bodhisattvas, and the glorious mountain assembly of Buddhas and Bodhisattvas.
Homage
To Amitabha Buddha in the land of ultimate Avalokiteshvara, great compassion, Bodhisattva, great strength, Bodhisattva, earth store, great vow, Bodhisattva, and the assembly of great pure sea light, Bodhisattvas.
please sit down. The great compassion mantra. Namo
O great compassionate Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, Namo great compassion Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, Namo great compassionate Buddhas and Bodhisattvas.
Namo
Trayaya Namo Harya
Avaraya
Bodhisattvaya Mahasattvaya Mahakarunikaya Om Sarvaravaye Sodanadasya Namaskritva Imamarya Varokiteshvara Ramdava Namo Narakendi Hri Mahavaswami Sarvaharhatu Shobham Ajiyam Sarva Sattva Namo Vastava Namo Vak Avitato Taryatha Om Avaloke Lokate ihiri mahabodhisattva sarva sarva mala mala mahi mahi hridayam koro koro karmam doro doro vijati mahavijati dara dara dirinishvaraya chala chala Muktelehi Shina Shina Asham Prashari Prashaya Holo Holo Mara Holo Holo He Sara Sara Siri Siri Soro Soro Bodhiya Bodhiya Bodhaya Bodhaya Maitreya Narakendi Krishanina Vayamana Swaha Siddhaya Swaha Mahasiddhaya Swaha Siddhayoge Shvaraya Swaha Narakindi Swaha Maranara Swaha Sira Simha Mokaya Swaha Sarva Mahasiddhaya Swaha Chakraha Siddhaya Swaha Padma Kasaya Swaha Narakindi Vagalaya Swaha Mavadi Sankaraya Swaha Namo Ratna Trayaya Namo Arya Valokite Shvaraya Swaha Om Siryanto Mantra Padaya Swaha.
The Dhamma
Body is bringing morning light in concentration. My heart is at a smile is born on my lips. This is a new day, and I vow to go through it in mindful. The sun of wisdom has risen, shining in every direction. Noble Sangha, diligently bring your mind into meditation. Namo Shakyamunaye Bodhaya. Namo Shakyamunaye Bodhaya. Namo Shakyamunaye Bodhaya.
First for opening a sutra. The
Surpass profound and wonderful Dharma is difficult to encounter in hundreds of millions of eons. I now see and hear it, receive and uphold, and I vow to fathom the Tathagata's true meaning. Namo Shakyamuni Buddha, Namo Shakyamuni Buddha, Namo Shakyamuni Buddha.
Namo
Olambana Assembly of Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. Namo Olambana Assembly of Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. Namo Olambana Assembly of Buddhas and Bodhisattvas.
the Buddha
Speaks the Olambana Sutra. Thus I have heard at one time the Buddha dwelt Ashravasti in the garden of the benefact. 6 penetrations and wished to cross over his father and mother to repay their kindness for raising. Thus using his way, he regarded the world and saw that mother had been born among the hungry ghosts, having neither food nor drink. She was but skin and bones. Mahamod Galayana felt deep pity and sad, filled a bowl with food and went to provide for his mother. She got the bowl, screened it with her left hand, and with her right hand made a fist of food, but before entered her mouth it churned into burning coals which could not be eaten. Mahamod Galayana called out and wept sorrow. Turned to the Buddha to set forth all of this. The Buddha said, "Your mother's offenses are deep and firmly rooted. You alone do not have enough power. Although your filial sounds move heaven and earth, the heaven spirits, the earth spirits, twisted deed, and those outside the way, Brahmins, and the 4 heavenly king gods are also without sufficient strength. The awesome spiritual power of the assembled Sangha of the 10 directions is necessary for liberation to be attained. I shall now a Dharma of rescue which causes all those in difficulty to leave worry and suffer, and to eradicate obstacles from offenses. The Buddha told Moggallana the 15th day month is the Pravadana day for the assembled Sangha of the 10 directions, for the sake of fathers and mothers of 7 generations past, as well as for fathers and mothers of the present who are in distress. You should prepare an offer of clean basins full of hundreds of flavors, and the 5 fruits, and other offer of incense, oil, lamps, candles, beds, and bedding, all the best of the world. Greatly virtuous assembled Sangha of the 10 directions. On that day all the holy assembly, whether in the mountains, practice dhyana samadhi, or obtain the 4 fruits of the way, or walking beneath trees, or using the dance of the 6 penetrations to teach and transform sound hearers, and those enlightened to condition or provisionally manifesting as bhikshus, when in fact they are great bodhisattvas. On the 10th ground, all complete with pure precepts and ocean-like virtue of the holy way, should gather in a great assembly. All of like mind receive the pravadana food. If one thus makes offerings to these pravadana sanghans, one's present father and mother, parents of 7 generations past, as well as the 6 kinds of close relatives, will escape from the 3 paths of suffer. At the time attain release their clothing and food with spontaneously appear. If the parents are still alive, they will have wealth and blessings for 100 years. Parents of 7 generations past will be transformationally born. They will independently enter the celestial flower light and experience limitless bliss. At the time the Buddha commanded the assembled Sangha of the 10 directions to recite mantras and vows for the sake of the donor's family, for parents of 7 generations. After practicing dhyana concentration, the Sangha accepted the food when they first received the base, placed it before the Buddha in the stupa. When the assembled Sangha had finished the mantras and vows, they received the. At the time the Bhikshu Modgalayana and the assembly of great Bodhisattvas were all extremely delighted. Full sound of Modgalayana's crying ceased. At the time Modgalayana's mother obtained liberation from 1 kalpa of suffering. As a hungry Modgalayana addressed the Buddha and said, "This disciple's parents have received the power of the merit and virtue of the triple jewel because of the awesome spiritual power of assembled Sangha. If in the future the Buddha's disciples practice filially by offering to the Hulambana base, able to cross over their present fathers and mothers as well as those of the generations past," the Buddha replied, "Good, and I am happy you asked that question. I just wanted to speak about, and now you have bhikshus, bhikshunis, kings, crown princes, great ministers, great officials, cabinet members, the 100 ministers, and the tens of thousands of citizens wish to practice compassionate filial conduct for the sake of the parents who, as well as for the sake of fathers and mothers of 7 lives past. On the 15th day of the 7th month, the day of the Buddha, still the day of the Sangha's Pravarana, they all should place hundreds of flavors of foods in Ulambana basins and offer them to the Pravarana Sangha of the 10 directions. They should vow to cause the length of their present fathers and mothers' lives to reach 100 years without illnesses, without afflictions or worries, and also vow to cause 7 generations of fathers and mothers to leave the suffer of the hungry ghost to be born among humans. Blessings and bliss without limit, the Buddha told all the good men and good women, those disciples of the Buddha who cultivate filial conduct should in thought after thought constantly recall their present fathers and mothers when making offerings, as well as the and mothers of 7 lives past, and for their sakes perform the offering of the Hulambana base to the Buddha and the Sangha, and thus repay the loving kindness of the parents who raise and nourish them. At the time the Bhikshu Modgalaya and the fourfold assembly of disciples, hearing what the practice it with delight, Namo Modgalayana Mahasattva. Namo Modgalayana Bodhisattva Mahasattva. Namo Modgalayana Bodhisattva Mahasattva.
Atha Paramarmita, the Bodhisattva.
Bodhisattva Avalokita, while moving in the discourse of Prajnaparamita, shed light on the five skandhas and found them equally. And after this penetration, he overcame ill-beingness and Shariputra. Form is emptiness, emptiness is form. Form is not other than emptiness, emptiness is not other than form. The same is true with feelings, perceptions, mental formation, consciousness. Listen, Shariputra, all dharmas are marked with emptiness. They are neither produced nor destroyed, neither defiled nor immaculate, neither increasing nor decreased. Therefore in emptiness there is neither form nor feelings, no perception nor mental formation, no eye or ear or nose or tongue or body or mind, no form, no sound, no smell, no taste, no touch, no object of mind, no realms of elements, no interdependent origins and no extinction of them, no ill-being, no cause of ill-being, no end of ill-being, and no understanding, no attainment, because there is no attainment. The Bodhisattva's ground in Prajnaparamita find no minds having no obstacles. They overcome fear, liberating themselves forever from illusion and realizing perfect nirvana. All Buddhas in the past, present, and future arrive at Anuttara Samyak Sambodhi. Therefore one should, the perfect understanding is the highest mantra, the unequaled mantra, the destroyer, being the incorruptible truth. The mantra of Prajnaparamita should therefore be proclaimed. Gate gat para gate para samgate bodhi swaha. Gate gate para gat para samgate bodhi swaha. Gate gate para gat para samgate bodhi swaha. Namo Amitabhaya Tathagata Yatha Amrito Bhavi Prita Siddham Bhavi Amrita Vikranti Amrita Vikranta Gamini Gagana Kirta Kari Swaha. Namo Amitabhaya Tathagata Yatha Amrito Bhavi Amrita Siddham Bhavi Amrita Vikranta Gamini Gagana Kirta Kari Swaha. Namo Amitabhaya Tathagata Yatha Amrito Bhavi Amrita Siddham Bhavi Amrita Vikranta Gamini Gagana Kirta Kari Swaha.
The three refuges. I
Take refuge in the Buddha, the one who shows me the way in this life. I take refuge in the Dharma, the way of understanding and of. I take refuge in the Sangha, the community, harmony and In the refuge of Buddha, I clearly see the path of light and beauty in the world dwelling. The refuge of Dharma, I learn to open many doors on the path of transformation. Dwelling in the refuge of Sangha, shining light that supports me, keeping my practice free of obstruction.
Taking
Refuge in the Buddha, in myself I aspire to help all people recognize their own awakened nature, realizing the mind of love, taking refuge in the Dharma. In myself I aspire to help all people fully master the ways of practice and walk together on the path of liberation, taking refuge in the Sangha. In myself I aspire to help all people build fourfold community, to embrace all beings and support their transformation.
sharing the merit,
Reciting the sutras, practicing the way of awareness, gives rise to benefits without limits. We vow to share the fruits with all beings. We vow to offer tribute to parents, teachers, friends, and numerous beings who give guidance and support along the path. Namo Shakyamuni Buddha. A couple of announcements that I forgot about. Our meditation class is starting again next weekend, on the 9th, I believe. Every second and fourth Saturday at 10 a.m. So the discussion, the talk. Additionally, we are looking for participants in our performance crew. So if you're here for Ulaanbaatar and then you saw there was a dance performance, that was done. So we typically do something similar every holiday. And so Kim, one of our members who's setting it up, is looking for volunteers for the New Year celebration performance. She's looking for everyone, girls, guys, and everything in between. So if you're interested, there's a flyer outside the door that you can scan and sign up for. And she'll start the practices during the Christmas break for our Lunar New Year celebration at the end of, or beginning of February. So if you're interested, please either email her to ask her any questions or to sign up for it as well.